Kia ora everybody. I'm very nervous, so kia ora. No reira, tēnei au ko te hōkai nei o taku tapu wai, ko te hōkai nuku, ko te hōkai rangi, ko te hōkai ato tūpuna tāne nui ārangi. I piki ai ki te rangi tūhāhā, ki te tihi o mānono, i roko hi atu rā, ko i o matua kore anake. I riro iho wai ngā kete o ngā wānanga, ko te kete tuauri, ko te kete tuatea, ko te kete aranui. Ka tiritiri a, ka paupau a, ko papa tuanuku, ka puta tira tangata ki te whai au ki te amarama a tihei wa mauri ora. Anā ko te tuatahi e mihi kauake ki ngā tangata no kone, ngā tangata te moimoia, no reira mihi tonu anu ki a tātou. Ai nau i tiaki ana mātou, mine aki ana mātou i wēnei whenua. No reira e ngā marae maha, ngā kainga maha, ngā mate i runga i tō tātou nei poko whiwhi, no reira haramai, haramai, haramai haere. Hoki ki te kanohi ora, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Just to translate, I first started with a prayer we call a krakia in Aotearoa, and it spoke about knowledge that we shared and knowledge that you guys have shared, and that gives thanks to you guys. Also to the indigenous people of this land, and then also coming back to everyone in the room that have lost, have loved ones that are now gone. I bring all their thoughts and all their whakaro to this room at this point in time. But also not just the ones you have lost, the ones that you have left at home and your families that have able used to be here today. So kia ora tātou. My name's Hani, and yeah, we'll be subbing in and out like the All Blacks today. So I'll pass the ball over to Kati, and yeah, she's German, so she better score us a try.
When I came to New Zealand, I never realised the balls went round. I'm like, what's going on? Germans don't do rugby. They play football. Kia ora, Hane. Thank you for welcoming us to all of us here today, and acknowledging the original people of this land, past, present, and emerging. I'm incredibly honoured that I'm co-presenting today, and like Hani said, we'll be swapping in and out and keep it interesting. Co-presenting about some of the kaupapa or the work that we were doing over the last 18 months, and I hinted a little bit about it yesterday. Can people just raise their hand that were in the room yesterday and saw my presentation? Oh my God, okay. I'm going to do the same survey today that I did yesterday, and you're not allowed to shout a number, okay? Just a heads up. Right, let's delve into it. So I'm a freshwater ecologist turned science communicator. I got highly frustrated about the people in policy, the people that do the work on the ground, not realizing the state that our freshwaters are in. Yet scientists have been publishing and talking about the state of New Zealand's freshwaters for a long, long time, but they've been publishing so in papers and not necessarily talking the right language to the right people. The freshwater health is under pressure. Freshwater is our rivers, lakes, wetlands, aquifers, and the map on the left shows deforestation in New Zealand, not directly related to freshwater, but directly related to the quality of freshwater. So over the since pre-Polynesian arrival, we have had, we lost 60% of our native forest cover, so New Zealand was covered 90% in forest, and there's only 30% left, which is shown by the map on the right-hand side. And then it's not only our forest cover, but it's the impacts on the rivers, and you can see that on the image on the right. This is a typical sort of braided river system in the South Island of New Zealand. You can see a lake in the upper part of the catchment, and it drains into the river. And then you can see some forestry, primarily that dark green area on the right and on the left as well of that picture, exotic pine forestry, barging right to the edge of the river. And then on the other side, we have agriculture, essentially also bordering right onto the river, so there's no buffer or anything to protect the river and the water quality. So commonly in the upper parts of the catchments, we have national parks because they're not very good for usage for agricultural use. And then as we come down further towards the coast and the catchments, we have sheep and beef farming, or forestry further up, then sheep and beef farming, and then horticulture in the lower parts and dairy farming. And then as we get closer to the coast, we also have bigger cities, so urbanisation being an issue for our freshwaters. This is a video. The dark green area shows wetlands in the northern part of New Zealand, and as we swipe across, this is what the wetland content is now. We lost 90% of our wetlands in New Zealand, so this is an area where these guys come from, and they were speaking about this a lot more. But just seeing the before and after is pretty significant. You can see the extent of wetland loss. 90%, by the way, is a global figure. So that the kidneys of the earth we destroyed, essentially. So the impacts of that is that there's a toll on our taonga, or the treasured species. A huge amount of our native species are threatened. I expect it's not much different in Australia, but 76% of freshwater fish are threatened. 3.7 out of 4 frogs are threatened. I mean, there's nearly all our frogs buggered. 78% of terrestrial birds and 68% of freshwater birds. And so here's my survey, because not only these species are affected by poor water quality and habitat destruction, it's also the humans. So everyone that was in the room yesterday, how many % of New Zealand rivers are unsafe for swimming? Meaning that if you were to go into that river at any particular time, it might make you sick. How many % of all the rivers in New Zealand? Give me a number. Just shout it out. Pardon? Oh, okay, interesting.
Why?
100%. All right. Well, it's quite serious, so I really would like you to take away this number. It's 51% of our rivers are unsafe to go for a swim. So that means you get unwell if you do put your head under. And I hope this is a shock to a lot of you, because, New Zealand's really good at marketing itself as clean and green. And so seeing this number is something that scientists have been saying for a long time, that we will get to that point, and yet we never really get the action on the ground, just like Jenny was saying in the documentary as well. There's this huge lag effect of us knowing something and then actually doing something about it. So the good thing is, though, and I love positive stories because that's what gets me up in the morning, and I feel like I haven't given up hope to humanity yet. We can restore, and this is what has been happening in New Zealand for the last 15 or so years. We have catchment groups. These are groups, sort of grassroots, community groups that are often farmer-led, but also Indigenous-led, and they come together and restore. Quite commonly, they put up fences along the rivers so that livestock can't access the rivers anymore, so that a lot of the trampling that happens as cows get into the river don't damage and flush down the sediment, or they don't poo directly in the river, so they put up fences, and then they plant between the river and the fence, which we call riparian planting or margin planting. And what I've learned, the top left image is my daughter a few years ago. So what I've learned by going out and being with these communities and restoring the land around the rivers is that it's not technical. We can do all the modelling in the world and can get all the money in the world to put in these plants, but what happens when we're out there together and restore is absolutely relational. And so it's that relationship that we build with the community, but primarily with the river and the land that we're on is absolute key. So relational restoration is something that we forgot, or we need to relearn. And this is something that isn't new to Māori or Indigenous communities in New Zealand. They have a whakatauki, or a saying, which says, "Ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au." I am the river, and the river is me. And so that pretty much sums it up. And these guys will talk a little bit more about how important fresh water is for them. And so before I go on and talk a little bit more about that relational restoration, I get Hane to talk to you guys about the Māori worldview of whakapapa.
Oh, kia ora, kati. This is, how can I put this? This is, I guess, a framework it's called a kōrero tukuiho. It's been passed down from generations of the beginning of time to us. And it just speaks of the Earth Mother, the Sky Father, and her children, everything in between. So it's a Māori a Māori kind of framework on how we see things, Māori worldview of if we don't look after Papa Tuanuku and Rangi Nui, the Sky Father, well, yeah, and all their children, so the wind, the rain, the rako, the trees, the birds, the animals, us. If we don't play our part, then we're done. But it's kind of got a cycle, and you know this. You know this kōrero. You know this talk, so I won't dive into it. But there is a deeper kōrero talk within this framework about their kids, their jobs, their roles, how we're supposed to look after it, how they're looking after us, and I guess part of that is science. So kia ora. I'll give it back to Kati.
Kia ora. Sorry, the ball. Yeah, I've got the ball. And so one way of this relation of restoration or of acknowledging the Māori worldview has been put into law back in 2017 by the Te Awa Tupua River Claims Settlement Act for the Wanganui River, which is in the western part of New Zealand. It's one of the first rivers, the first river in the world that was acknowledged as an indivisible living entity with its own rights. So it has the legal status of a person. It was recognised with a Global Impact Award this year because the same year the Ganges was also in India recognised as a legal entity, and then other countries like Spain and Japan followed suit. But we didn't just stop with the rivers. We also then in 2014 recognised Te Urewera, which is a forest, as a legal person, and then this year a mountain, Taranaki Maunga, in the North Island, the west of the North Island, New Zealand. So recognising Te Ao Māori, the Māori worldview, the genealogies, the principles that come with it has been an ongoing battle. I talked a little bit more in depth about this yesterday, so sorry if you missed it. I talked about allyship, but really it's kotahitanga, it's the unity or solidarity that we're trying to form New Zealand, European or Pākehā and Māori Indigenous communities. So 1840 we had the signage of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, or the Treaty of Waitangi, but it was an ongoing battle from then on to recognise the Māori culture really as something more than just a second culture, but to integrate it, especially in the restoration sciences and my day-to-day work. So the Māori language is an intricate part of the culture. I feel I should not be talking about this because this is not my whakaaro, it's not my story, but the numbers that stand here aren't just numbers. There are huge events that happened in New Zealand, and there are lots of little wins along the way, and this is just the beginning, really, you know. So there was a Māori language petition. Before that, the Māori language wasn't allowed, right? You were punished for using Te Reo Māori. Then in the 80s, there was the establishment of Kohanga Reo, which is early childhood centres. Then in 1987, Te Reo Māori was an official language in New Zealand. Then we had first Māori-owned language radio stations, Kura Kaupapa Māori in the 90s, so they use a full immersion Māori schools. And then in the 2000s, it's just an ongoing revival of the language, which is such a key part of the Māori worldview and the acknowledging the solidarity with our partners and allies. And I'm hopeful that we're on this upward trajectory. My children go to a Māori medium school. I'm hopeful that the historic hurt is kind of overcome with the new generations and with my children playing together and learning that worldview now. This is not compulsory, this is a decision we made. But I also heard that just a couple of weeks ago, and it was mentioned earlier today, it's Tumathanda, that the First People's Assembly of Victoria signed a treaty, and I think that is absolutely incredible. And I think this is absolutely the step in the right way. And I know I've had a few people come and approach us and say, oh, New Zealand is so great when it comes to Indigenous integration and stuff. But, I mean, look, from 1840 to now, this is how long it took us to get to where we are, and we're nowhere near where we should be. You know, there's lots and lots of equity issues I talked about yesterday. So I love that milestone that you guys reached, and I just really hope that you people in the room as science communicators help share that message of collaboration. And this is what takes me to kotahitanga, or that unity and solidarity. And we were talking about this. Many Indigenous cultures have, or trying to work with Indigenous cultures around the globe, there's this idea of two-eyed seeing, where you have two lenses and glasses. But for us, we found this framework, which is called He Waka Taurua. So these are, a waka is a canoe, and you can see this is a framework from Maxwell et al. In 2020, which we just took and plonked in here because it pretty much summed up what we were trying to say. There's a two-hulled canoe, and one side are the Māori tools, the actions and approaches, and the other side of the canoe are the tauiwi tools, so the white people, the New Zealand European actions and approaches, and together we're joined by the deck. We have different waka or canoes, but we're paddling together, and we are joined by some of them, and so we're recognising that we don't always have to align, or we don't always have to have the same thoughts or do the same things, but we are still ending up together where we want to go. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to these amazing people, because they're going to talk about how we steered that two-hulled canoe of the last 18 months, which brought them here today, which I'm just so grateful for, and for ASC to cover the accommodation cost as well. So, kia ora.
All right. We better score a try now, but kia ora and. Kia ora. I'm just going to kind of explain a little bit of who we are, and then I'll share the ball with my friends. Who's a scientist in there? Put your hand up. Yeah, obviously you can see I didn't put my hand up. I'm not a scientist at all. So if you're wondering why I'm here, so don't ask me that. Ngā kaitiaki o ngā wai Māori. This is who we are, and that translates into the guardians of the waterway. Though I'm not a scientist, but the key word in there is kaitiaki, and kaitiaki means guardian. Within your guys' own profession and in your own lives and worlds, you're all kaitiaki in some way. So we're all guardians, you're all keepers of knowledge, you're all carers of whatever you do in your life. So who's a kaitiaki? Everyone's a kaitiaki, kia ora. So we're ngā kaitiaki o ngā wai Māori, and we're a collective of 5 tribes in the upper catchment of the Wairua catchment, repo, swamplands. In its pre-European, this wetlands is this is just the upper catchment of this wetland. The wetland is actually quite big, it runs all the way down, but we focus more on that zone line. And we are 5 tribes come together to restore the wetlands. This wetland was once the largest wetlands in whole of New Zealand. So you can ask ChatGPT whatever you want, but it is, and it will tell you. So these are the 5 hapu. Ngāti Hau, which is up at the top of the catchment. Ngāti Kahu o Torongari, we're kind of coming down to the side. Te Orewai is up to the far left part of the map. Turiroroi, Te Parawhau is the lower catchment. And that's how we kind of work. Through the whakapapa that Kati spoke on, that we all related. I think one point in time, all our ancestors were at the same party, singing, I don't know, Kumbaya, and we're all related. So that's how we keep real close. And down here at the bottom, we have our sacred houses. They're called maraes. So every tribe has a whare nui. And this is where our cultural practices take place, big decisions. We all come together, birthdays, funerals, everything takes place within those houses. And every hapu has one house. Well, some have more, so yeah. So I'm just going to play a little bit of a video of just to show you the Hukurangi Repo. Just go back to that map. The Hukurangi Repo was drained back in the early 90s. Similar to the video that was before us, yeah, it was drained and all the streams were straightened so the water can go faster. So it was all cleared for farmlands. Within that, they placed pump stations on there to, in event of a flood, pushes out the water and clears the water faster. But as these pumps get turned on, our tuna, our eels, our long fin, short fin eels, go through these turbines and cut them up. And this is actually the reason why these 5 hapu have come together, because of the decline in the eels in this catchment. So just kind of a, yeah, why who we are. This is a video that, yeah, it'll give you kind of the story of what I've just said, but kia ora.
It's the land that governs the man. Once one of the Southern Hemisphere's largest wetlands, the 55,000 hectare Kaipara Harbour catchment is one of Aotearoa's most unique landscapes and of immense cultural significance to the people of the land. Traditionally home to thousands of varieties of flora, fauna and taonga species, the swamplands were drained in the early 1900s by the Northland Catchment Commission. The aim of the scheme was to increase production from the Hikurangi swamp. It was proposed to do this by reducing and controlling the flooding in the swamp and the lower river flats of the Waiotu and the Whakapara rivers. Improving drainage conditions in these areas to a standard acceptable for good present-day grassland farm management was also one of the initial goals. In controlling the flooding in the swamp and the lower river flats of the Waiotu and the Whakapara rivers. Improving drainage conditions in these areas to a standard acceptable for good present-day grassland farm management was also one of the initial goals. Unfortunately, this good management has led to poor water quality in the Wairua and Wairua rivers. Migrating tuna being killed in drainage pumps, the degradation of peatlands, mass sediment flow into the Kaipara Harbour, loss of natural habitat, and difficulties raising capital to effectively manage the scheme. Thankfully, we now have a chance to make things right. Recent conversations with 2 major landowners have led to an opportunity for the purchase of the Otonga Pocket, one of 7 subcatchments included in the Hikurangi drainage scheme. The Otonga Pocket is bounded by the Whakapara River to the north, Wairua River to the west, and the stop bank near Wilsonville Quarry to the south. The area is made up of approximately 1,300 hectares. Prior to being drained, the lands were a mix of marshland, swamp and bog, playing a vital role in the retention of sediment and nutrients during a flooding event and acting as a vital source of kai for tangata whenua. Conversion of the Otonga Pocket into a water retention basin will potentially improve the performance of the flood loss scheme by reducing flooding in the other 6 pockets, decreasing sediment flow into the Wairua River and Kaipara Moana, reducing the reliance on flood pumps, allowing the opportunity for some pumps to be replaced by floodgates, and re-establishing vital habitat and biodiversity within the area. With willing sellers and a number of interested buyers, now is the time to return Otonga Pocket to its original glory, serving as a vital wetland in the Hikurangi repo. Ko tawhiti ke tō haerenga mai, kia kore e haere tonu. He nui rawa o mahi, kia kore e mahi tonu. You have come too far not to go further. You have done too much not to do more.
So kia ora, so that gives you the kind of the size of the wetlands of the Hikurangi swamp, which is our home. The next, what do I do next slide? Huh? That one. Oh. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, so this is the Hikurangi Swamp. This is it in its normal day, and then this is what happens in a flood event. So it fully floods. And, yeah, just a visual of what it looks like. And, referring back to, what's his name, Professor Tony, about climate change, these events are happening more and more. So the decline of tuna are happening more and more. This is a pump station, so 1 of 7. They put 7 on, so yeah, we're down there picking up the dead tuna sometime and taking them to council and throwing them on the doorstep. But that always doesn't work. So yeah.
No, we don't put it back together.
Yeah. So this is one of the pump stations. That's its auger. This is one of our elders, Uncle Hori, picking up all the eels after the floods and that. And yeah, I'm going to pass the ball to Shante. Kia ora.
Sorry, I'm real short. Kia ora koutou, ko Shante kona kingi tōku ingoa. Nā te kahu o Toronare me hapu, nā rei tonua no kāinga. So thanks for having us, and thanks Phil, acknowledge your hard work behind the scenes to help get us here and ourselves. But we wanted to show you those videos because this is our narrative. This is why we do the mahi we do. And Hane mentioned us as being kaitiaki. We're kaitiaki 7 days a week, 24 hours, you name it, we're that. Because it got left to us, it's been passed down, and unfortunately we don't want to pass it down to our grandchildren and so on and so on. But the way our coalition's playing at the moment, I'm not seeing much hope, but hopefully in the next 12 months we'll be able to change that by voting. So we'll see how that rolls. But this is the timeline. 1919 to 1935 was the Hikurangi Repo. It was drained. So the area that we live in, and myself and Hane, Sonny, he travels through, this area was drained. This picture was taken during that time. This repo that you saw in the video, that was full of Cody trees. And, you could just imagine what that wetland was doing by itself without any human mankind. So, like the scientists, the chief scientist said today, climate change, what we do as human mankind is impacting. Well, for us going into the future, it's impacting. It's impacting us as a culture and a people. And this is why we do the mahi we do. 1968, we had 7 pump stations built to manage a flood. And I mean, that was to manage not really floods, it was to manage dairy farming. So for a long time, our people had to endure these, watching it get pulled to bits of what we knew. Our kaumātua that's still alive today, when he was 5, he can still recall, he's 86 now, 88, and he can still recall the fires burning when the repo was being destroyed. We all live in the upper catchment of the repo. We never lived down on the repo. Who lives in the repo? It's a flood zone. As Indigenous people, we lived at higher ground. So, we watch that they watch that every day of their lives. They smelt it when they went to sleep. So, it's heart-wrenching just getting those cut-up tuna out of there. But we have to do what we have to do. 2008 to 2011, we got a collectiveness together because of our decline, tuna. And when you think about a tuna, we're all scientists, but, a tuna has about 60 to 100 years before it grows and does its tuna whakaheke and goes out to the Pacific. That's almost 2 generations. And if we're on a decline, my granddaughters that I have today, they're not going to be able to see the next tuna grow. So, for us, that's where the importance of tuna is. Not only that, they're our indicators as a people. If they're not in there doing what they should be doing, then us as a people are not thriving either. So, as Kati's said, we are the river, then the river is us. If we are not looking after the river, then we are not doing our job. We are responsible for whatever happens at higher ground. So we got together in 2012 to make this collective group. And as you know, you've got to create entities to get funding, to be heard. And so we did that. And in a Te Ao Māori world, that's a Pākehā, that's a white man's game. You know, we want to exercise our mana mo te hake. We want to exercise what we do on our land and how we do that. But unfortunately, we don't own the repo. It's all owned by farmers. It's not owned by us. So we had to create those intergenerational relationships, thanks to our great-great-grandparents that already did that for us, because the importance for us is that we never leave. We're there for life. We're already creating the next generation as we speak. So, you know, these other farmers that live in the repo and still there today, they're third-generation farmers, they have tamariki and children that don't want to farm. They're like, we're out. We watch you slave yourselves for what? And they're selling up. But for us as hapu, we don't have this money to be able to buy that. We can't buy it back. So we have to work smart and strategic. So what did we do? We levelled up. We got ourselves to a point where we need to create ourselves to be scientists. We need to interwove our mātauranga that we hold dear to us and intertwine that with Western science. Why? Because we need to collect the data to inform an actual argument. So, and it makes an informed decision, right? And this is how we think in our world. And if you don't, well, then it's sort of like, well, where's your project? What are you planning to do? We're going to be working in a puzzle, 1,000 puzzle, trying to work out where all the pieces go. No, this is why you level up. You go out and get the education or the mātauranga. Power is knowledge, knowledge is power. So what do? We go and do that. What do we do next? We go and make sure that this resource consent that's on this hukurangi repo is actually being held accountable to those local governments. And we're doing that. So, you know, our crew of 10, we couldn't all come because they've already been travelling around the world looking at other Indigenous people dealing with the same matters. So we don't just stay home and look after our own backyard. We go and see what our other whānaus and Pacific brothers and sisters are up to. So what did we do? We levelled up. We went and got ourselves educated. We get out there. We water monitor our waterways. And we do that for us. Is there? Sorry. Oh, I needed to go down. So when we talk about water monitoring, and someone mentioned it today in their presentation, I think it was you mentioned that they do their water because that means something to them. Well, that's the same with us. It means something to us because once upon a time we would get kai from there, food source. We would take water from there. We would swim from there. So a lot of our, so we have 5 hapu. Each hapu has about 8 to 15 water monitoring sites that they actually check. So, and they mean something to us. So now we can inform arguments when things are not going on. So when we know what the pH is doing, the conductivity, we know all those things are not working out, we know something's wrong. So this is where we collaborate with Crown agencies. We actually have to get in there and actually be friends. As much as the Treaty of Waitangi is not honoured and we don't want to be their friend, we actually have to be strategic and say, right, we need to sit at the table and we need to make things right. We can't be doing this in separate rooms anymore. So we've built this partnership up in regards to trying to get our stories across the line and doing it in a way that holds them accountable. So the RMA, the Resource Management Act, you know, we almost have to be lawyers, planners, ecologists, data analysis. We are all that. That's what we are as kaitiaki, because we don't have a building that actually can supply us that. So on there, 2012, we did ongoing relationships. 2018 and 19, Waima, Waitai, Waiora. What that means is fresh water to sea. It was a collaborated group with Fonterra, DOC, and other iwi partners, and that went on for 5 years. And so from that, we made great relationships. We managed to shape change. And that's what it's all about. It's no good us tiring ourselves out if we are not actually trying to shape change. So we've shaped some change. Up until 2022, we were doing this unfunded. No resources, just going out, finishing our 9 to 5 jobs, going out to do our water monitoring, you know, and we could see that that was not consistent. We couldn't inform an argument on data that was not consistent, you know, so we had to look for funding to actually hire us in to actually look after our own rohe, our own waterways. So that's what we did. We went to Ministry for Environment. They gave us like 500,000 to hire in 8 staff. Who can actually work with 8 staff at 500,000? I know no Crown agency can. So, you know, but we make it work because we went from nothing to having something. So we made it work, and we've been thriving for the last 4 years with that fund, and then we managed to find some more funding to carry it on so our kaitiaki can do what they need to do. But when we talk about being resourced as Indigenous, if you are resourced, you'll get the outcomes. And we know that because we wouldn't be doing the roles that we do if it didn't pay us also to do the outcomes, because how are you going to put bread and butter on your table? And in New Zealand, we can't afford butter, yet we make it, you know. So 224, we got the pumps. So we talked about 7 pump stations earlier, and we managed to get one replaced with a gravity gate. This gravity gate cost $183,000. To put in an Archimedes pump into this space would have costed us $5.6 million for 2. And a lot of that is just infrastructure, not so much the Archimedes pump. The Archimedes pump would have been about $500,000. But the repo, the scheme, in a flood, and say before Gabrielle came, we went into 2 years of rain. The power bill was $638,000. That's what it was every year. And that's an indicator to us to say, we've been in flood for a long time, because the power bill that's running the scheme is paying out $638,000 for power. And no, they don't have solar. You would think the Crown would have got solar by now. Not quite there yet. So, you know, like for us, we have to, every time the flood comes, we have to go down and get those dead tuna. Yes, and we do put them on the Crown agency's front doorstep, and it's not, they don't smell nice. They smell disgusting, but it makes them do this work. Makes them get a gravity gate in. It took time, but I think they were getting sick of smelling those stink tuna. Right. There's a video. And this video is important because this is about collaboration. And videos are really good because it exposes the relationships. You know, we tend to work in isolation. Everyone does. Not just Indigenous people, not just Crown agencies. We just do that. That's what we're quite good at doing sometimes. But videos are empowering, and it gives a message. Coming back to you, Mark.
Kia ora, ko hona e rua tēnei no Tiuriroi, Mangarongo Mara Poroti. E tātu e mātou I runga I te karanga o tēnei kaupapa I tēnei rā, mo te mahi ana. Ngā kaunihera I konei, te take ko te hikoatanga o ngā tuna. I'm part of ngā kaitiaki ngā Waimāori, who are represented by Ngāti Kahu o Torongare, Ngāti Hau, Tiuriroi, Te Parapau and Te Orowai Hapu. We came together 12 years ago because of the fatalities of tuna coming through the pump stations on the Hikurangi Repo. 12 years later, we've come to this massive milestone with the implementation of a floodgate system as opposed to using an electric auger to exit the floodwaters off the Hikurangi Repo, and in doing so having our eels go through and getting cut up.
A lot of work by a lot of people to get this far over many, many decades. It's probably getting closer with this setup, do you think, even with how it was pre the flood system going in around here?
Yeah. For years now, I've lived on the swamp here all my life basically, and I've always pushed for these floodgates because I know they were going to work, and we're in the top end of the swamp scheme, and we know that we just get rid of that water a whole lot quicker and save the pasture. It's some of the best land here in Northland, most fertile land, so we need to look after it and manage it.
Over the last 10, 12 years, we had to start to form better relationships around our community at large, including our regional and district councils with our farmers, with everybody that lives around the Hikurangi Repo, and with our aim in mind to have a safe passage for our eels.
This project, it's a spin-off from the better off funding that we've got from the government, who's supported the modelling and the design aspect of the work. However, the farmers have paid through their targeted rates for the physical works. So the gravity gate sits within the junction pocket, which is located between the Whakapara and Waitu rivers, adjacent to State Highway 1, and it is selected because it is reasonably small and it's high up in the catchment. While a concrete box culvert through the middle of an earth bank may not win any architectural awards, it's actually a culmination of a lot of subtlety in design, and it addresses problems that have gone back many years and have been looked at by a lot of people, including previous landowners and hapu members who are no longer with us.
Our objective was to look at closing all the pump stations down and converting the repo back into its natural state. We, however, have to understand that economy is a big part of the taiao today, and we have to build relationships in compromising the things that we do. And so this floodgate system here is a milestone to the efforts of our relationships across the whole community, including our whāngai District Council, Northern Regional Council, our farmers who obviously have to be on board to allow us to do this type of mahi on their land. And so we come here to celebrate together. Individuals from different parts of community. This is a huge milestone for the Hikurangi Repo. It's a huge milestone for Whangarei, for Northland, and for the whole country. And I believe that it's going to be a milestone that reaches from far and wide across the world.
This was and is an incredibly important wetland system, nationally and internationally. Was one of the largest wetlands in the Southern Hemisphere when it was functioning, and there is great opportunity for us to enhance that and get back to a functioning ecosystem again.
Hoi anō, e hala I tēnei I te hakaroa ngia I taku kōrero, engari e mihi atu ki te hapuri katoa, ka tai atu I runga I tēnei, te karanga o tēnei rā. Thank you everybody from Katia ki ngā wai Māori, everybody playing a part with a common goal. That's a healthy environment for ourselves, our children and our grandchildren and generations to come. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you for that. I just want to say, I know we're rushing for time, but like a lot of this information in here is really valuable, and I think, I think we just got to look at that. I just wanted to point out, Andrew Cavell mentioned the funding from central government. That funding could only happen with us working with them. They had to have a mātauranga Māori component of that funding application. So myself and Delaray Armstrong helped write the mātauranga Māori component so that $1.2 million could be sourced to help with, one, the gravity gate and the case study that they had to undertake for the bigger picture of the Hikurangi Repo. So it's really that it was really key to make sure that we were in the midst of that partnership. And I say partnership because that's what the Tīti of Waitangi is about. It's about partnership. I also just want to say that a part of myself being in this tipu, meaning in this group table as Ngā Kaitiaki, my hapu put me in the Crown Agency. So I actually work for Northland Regional Council, and I'm a senior advisor in our rivers and natural hazards as well as our land team. And there was no way I wanted to work for the dark side. I just thought, what the hell, what are you thinking? What's wrong with you people? We need to fight them. Yeah, well, we need to fight them smarter. We need to get inside and find out what it is that we need to change. So I've been there for the last 4 years and working across Te Tai Tokerau, across the whole of Northland, in that space for our people. I come in with a hapu lens. The other key narrative that I wanted to leave before I hand it to Sunny, and I know we've got a panel, is that for us as mana whenua, we are not stakeholders. So when they draw little diagrams and they put tangata whenua and stakeholders in one box, we are not in their box. We are not a stakeholder. We are tangata whenua, we are mana whenua to the land. So we own it. We were here way before any other stakeholder. So it's really important, and I've told this to my Crown Agency colleagues in my job, because they're really good at putting us in boxes. I'm like, get us out of that box and make our own box. And we need to be at the start of your box, not at the end, not in the middle, because don't just ring us when you need an opening kariki or mihi. No, those days are gone. So, it's just really, you appreciate it when actually you are acknowledged for the people of the land. It makes a massive statement. The other thing in my role is to break down the science. So us as scientists, we're good at being scientists, but we're good at talking just science. We need to break it down into layman terms so that our audience is actually a part of the conversation that we're trying to achieve. So we do a lot of that with our whānau. And the best thing about us as kaitiaki, it's Māori teaching Māori. That is key. Indigenous people teaching Indigenous people. It's so empowering when you can allow them to do that and to stand back and be listeners and advisors, or just be the bank and help resource, like that. But unfortunately, we don't have banks. But
we have
kia ora.
lots of time tomorrow.
Yeah, and we have time tomorrow. Sorry, Sonny.
No, all good. Tēnā, Shante, o tira tēnā tātou katoa. You would have noticed that our elders over here, the Hona who was in the video, unfortunately he's here to stay home. We lost a great chief, a great rangatira at home early in the week. So we left the big guns at home and we brought the water guns, Hani and I. so I apologise in advance. It's my pleasure to be able to talk about how we worked alongside Kati and the team from Cawthron. Now that you sort of got context on the story of where we come from, what we wanted to do was, because a big part of our work is collecting the data and going out into the environment, but then our big job is then to feed back to our iwi, our hapu, our whānau. And so we wanted to explore tools that could help us tell the story to our families, as opposed to just putting up numbers that aren't quite clear for our people who are more visual learners. We wanted to use the world of Esri and the GIS space, and so that was the work that Kati and her team. So you see this picture here titled Whanaungatanga. I guess the easiest translation would be relationships, and we've heard all about that today in parts. But this was a relationship that we were luckily able to be resourced. So Kati, so in the first photo, those small photos up the top there, we spent some time with Kati and her team, and simply they come up, and whanaungatanga for us is really getting not to know people on a more intimate level. So we got to take them out prior to any work on the project, prior to any maps being created, prior to any work being created. We wanted to take them out onto the land, get their feet wet in the rivers, and share with them some of the stories, ancient stories that we've held close, significant sites that were special to us. We were able to take them out. And then it was reciprocated, so we went down and saw Kati's world. We saw a beautiful part of the world where she was from, in Nelson. And the awesome part of this, this project is that we did have the time to build that relationship. And yeah, it was awesome. So here we've got another one of our elders, Uncle Hori. And so Kati and them, and I acknowledge Kati in how they structured this relationship. Instead of coming in and saying, this is how we're going to do it, this is what we're going to do, she simply came in and said, we're an open book. She said, how do we want to do this? And so, it empowered us to be engaged, to make these tools, to develop these tools. They were developed together in collaboration, not kati saying, oh, Choice, here's your, I can make your apps, surveys to collect all your data, I can create story maps to tell the story. We were able to sit kanohi ki te kanohi, eye to eye, which is something that's super important to us, and really nut out how we wanted to visualize this data and learn all these tools that we were introduced to. And yeah, learning for us, it flowed both ways. I was able to share with Lisa, caught it all from a significant site that unfortunately after Cyclone Gabrielle has caused major destruction. Thousands of tons of sediment have come down, and now you can see this riverway on Google Maps, and it looks bright yellow. Is devastating for us, and we were able to share those stories prior to engaging in what I'll go on to talk about, where we were able to teach Kati and her team. On the other side, we were able to learn from them of those 3 tools that have actually changed a lot in how we work. And yeah, same thing, you can see down the picture. Our conversations would go every which way, and to eventually boil back to what we all agreed on, and it was an awesome process working alongside Kati's team, who taught us those skills. We are now equipped as a group to spatially visualize the work that we do, the sites that we do, and they also had a big part in helping us to digitize all that historical data that we've collected for over 10 years that's in people's workbooks, it's papers all from the days that they volunteered. We've got all these things that we're now able to utilize, thanks to Cawthron. Now all our data's presented pretty nice, and we can feed it well back to our families and our marae. And just towards the end of my little spiel, we wanted to track our data by the maramataka phases, the lunar phases, an aspect of Te Ao Māori that's important to us. So we wanted to embed these into our surveys that we created. We also were able to do, these are just, and I've just included these because we're able to include our, I think I heard things say earlier, what we valued, we were able to bring that to life. So, things like, can you eat? The more important things is, can you eat the fish can you eat the tuna from the rivers? Do you have the ability to care for guests when they come in? Those are all those were all the questions. Alongside water quality, those are the questions that our people were interested in. Can we feed our people? If we've got guests, if we've got big occasions, can we go down to the creek, put our hinaki in and be able to put a spread on for the family? So, yeah, we tried to embed Te Ao Māori right throughout our surveys and some of the work that we've done with Kati. And so, yeah, that sort of rounds up that. I'll pass it on to Kati for the last little bit.
Just the last slide, and we're running over, but it's really important that I think we have the time to present this to you to really get it, hopefully. And so sort of the take-home message, and that's something I also touched base on yesterday, is that there are many ways of knowing. We're sitting in that two-hulled canoe and having that time to build relationships. And I mean, Jenny, you spent 5 months over the last 2 years in Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, that is a decent chunk of time to spend on the ground. And I had some conversations yesterday about the Parks Department wanting to build relationships with Indigenous people, yet the people don't leave the office. They try to build relationships by staying in the office, and so that whanaunga tangata coming together is the most important thing. And having many ways of knowing and recognising them is a really good base level to start things off. And that's just the story map in case you wanted to take a look at it. This is a summary of what we were doing, apart from the capacity building, because we're not just creating something for Indigenous communities, we're doing it with them, so it's super powerful. And you can also just search Ngākaitiaki story map on Google. And on that note...
Oh, okay. Yeah, just to sum it all up, and I can go back to that slide so you can get the photo, but we've got a saying in Māori, nā ku te raurau, no te raurau, ka ora ai te iwi. With your basket of knowledge and out my basket of knowledge, the people will thrive. So, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Mark, if you could put up the screen. We've got about 13 minutes, and we were going to have a panel discussion, but I think we'll just take questions. And I might start off with the first question. You all talked, particularly Shantae and Sunny, about the importance of relationships. And you talked about the relationships you developed with the farmers, with different groups, with Kātia's group. Do you think science communicators have a role to help bring those people together and help those relationships to develop? Have a seat. No, just go and have a seat and grab a microphone and someone can say something.
Is Helen going to join us?
But yes, if there's questions, we've got time for about 3 or 4 questions, but who would like to answer that first question? Shantae?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it is. To have a science communicator in that space is really important, because that's what informs the decision making, right? So if you've got some science factual behind things, and then you intertwine the listening, the kōrero, or what's being discussed, that's important, because then you know what you informed it on.
Yeah, if I can add to, I think the role of science communicators is absolutely critical in building relationships and helping translate or bringing these groups together really, but particularly sharing that narrative that we were doing with the many eyes of seeing or many ways of knowing, and I was talking to Melina yesterday and I said, now that you're the big speech writer, couldn't you infiltrate some of the cultural aspects into these speeches? Because I think that's really what we could do as science communicator, to help shape that narrative of rather them and us, but we're together.
There's a question.
I'm going to jump in because I've got the mic.
Oh, well, there's also a lovely lady behind you.
There is, I know. But on the way there, what was the first moment like when Kati, you met these guys and you met Kati, and how did you feel about that? Who set that up?
Yeah. Well, it was actually, we were at Te Papa Museum and Kati hopped in the taxi. I was at a conference and I watched Kati have her spiel on the stage, and then we ended up hopping in the same van to go to the airport. And then we talked about a funding application that was supported by Ministry for Environment, access to an expert. And I said, hey, I'm just finishing off this application, would you like to be our expert? Boom. There you go. That's it. That's how our journey started. And it's gone more than that. But like we talk about tohus, we talk about things that happen for a reason. And now it's not gone. Like, she's going to be in our space forever. So, yeah.
Can I just add something to that? There was a lot of eating the first day we met. I'm not sure if Kati, I think she took a photo because she'd never been to an office that you can cook we had a little we had a little stovetop to make food at the hub, And so, yeah, there was a lot of eating.
So on a Tuesday morning, I walk in at 8 a.m. and here's Hane chucking 100 mussels on the carpet floor in the middle of this office. It's like, oh, we're going to have chowder today for lunch. And I'm like, okay, just chucking away at this. And it was the best chowder I ever had. It was amazing. So food is a key component, right? Because no one likes to be hungry or thirsty. Yeah.
There's a question from up there, back there.
I want to apologise in advance for shifting the tone of the discussion. But how have you combated any level of racism when you're working with communities, you're working with people who have taken your land, who may have pre-existing biases and stereotypes of the type of people that you may be? How do you combat, if you did encounter any level of racism?
It's still, it's kind of everywhere. But I guess, just the unique about our team, right? We got 4 different generations within our team. So, if we're just looking at the swampland itself, we actually have 4 different views on the timeline. And even same thing with the racism, we have 4 different eras of different racism or different would you say grievances. We talk about colonisation and stuff like that within Aotearoa. When you talk to Uncle Hori, he talks about when his dad, he was getting caned for speaking Māori, and they could only speak Māori. These are the traumas that they hold. Then you go down to my mum, and Shantae's my mum, by the way. Then you go down to Shantae's generation and those people's generations. They have other traumas and stuff. And then you get down to my generation, and there's one more generation under me. So we got another young girl who's my cousin that's under me too. So we're kind of close, but we're different generations. And we took from colonisation back then to colonisation now. It's some of my generation or even the younger generation don't know any better. It's normal. It's normal to be colonised. So we're actually in a time that we're decolonising and going backwards because we don't actually know the grievances and that. And I think part of that racism and stuff like that, and with any trauma or we call it hara, you need to shine the light on the sore and take off the band-aid and really fix it properly. And I guess in those generations, those 3 above me, they haven't wanted to take that band-aid off. They don't want to shine light on it. But this younger generation is willing to take that band-aid off. Kind of touching on what my mum was saying about the farmers don't want, the kids of the farmers or the grandchildren of the farmers, they don't want to farm anymore. They're actually totally the opposite. They're like, man, we should just restore this. And the farmers are like, what the hell? What are you talking about? The foundation, I sent you to school, all these things. I took you to I clothed you in that. And it was because of all the cows that I built, the farm that we live on. It's so this is kind of the generation. It's it's ruining the earth. That's never, I don't know if that's been a question in those other generations, but I don't know if I answered your question, but within our work, that's kind of how it is. We got different times. We still suffer racism, but I guess, I think this new generation, it's not as bad, but it's also we're willing to sort it out and sit at the table and kind of work it out. Take all those bandages off and shine some light on the deep-rooted traumas. So, yeah, kia ora.
The other thing is that, so for me, when I work in a Crown agency for council, it's about don't repeat the grievance. So if you've got a project, and most of us work in areas that is vulnerable, they're usually 95% Māori, low income, low everything you can actually imagine. It's sort of like, well, don't repeat grievances. Like, do the research, do what we've done, like, go and look at what we actually have done in the past as a Crown agency, and how can we be better at looking outside the box. And like, I work in a multicultural sort of environment, and a lot of our staff that come in, they don't know anything about Māori, and then when they do acknowledge it, other people that may sit next to them that are Pākehā are like telling them something different. So they sort of feel like, oh, which one's true, which one's not. So in my environment, I just tell it straight. And I just say, well, I'm not going anywhere fast, and I'm going to be here forever, and so are my next generation, and so on and so on. We can work smarter. We don't have to work like that anymore. How much more trauma do we need to carry on? So, yeah, and I think Indigenous people are ready to get to that, because we're at a generation that's ready to deal with it head on.
Down the front, this might be our last question.
Thanks. Amazing presentation, and what you guys are doing is amazing. But I wanted to ask a question about what keeps you going, because that's a long project to be working on, over a decade or something since it started. What were the moments where you were like, oh, just about to chuck it all in and go, look, this isn't going to work, and what got you through that?
What gets us through is we can't have those tona declining, because we can't have it in a book and just read about it and be extinct. We need that. That's what keeps us going. The other thing is that it's a part of our DNA that's been left for us. There's no choice. But we're in deep now. So it's like, well, we're here to stay, and we just got to find the funding to keep us going. And that's a part of my job and Delaray. We look for the funding to make sure that these guys can stay employed to keep doing this mahi, because it's valuable. It's not valuable just to us as a culture, but it's valuable because we're able to teach in our schools, because they're the converted. Our kids are the converted. We are not the converted as adults, because we will still eat a pudding knowing that we've got diabetes and we're going to eat it with cream. It's like, you can't have that. We're going to still eat it. But the kids, if we get them at a young age, they're the converters. So that's what we've learnt and what we know. If we keep teaching them, we'll be creating the pathways that need to carry on this mahi. It may not be on the same tipu, on the same table, but we're not giving up.
I think, Kati talked about, our worldview in terms of that saying, ko te awa, ko te awa ko au, I'm the river is me. And so if I truly believe that, that bit of kōrero that was handed down to me, then I'm really just looking after myself, and that's what really is. Personally, that's what drives me. I come from a health sciences background. This is way different to what I'm used to. But I've returned home to care for my grandmother, and it comes with a responsibility. So that's what pushes me. For me, we're latecomers. We're the young ones in the team. I guess the sort of succession plan. But yeah, I think that's what drives me personally. So, chat.
Hani and Kati, just one final statement from you two.
Just a tautoko what Jonte and Sunny have said. There's a lot of our, that's just a presentation, and that's only a little squig of who we are. There's a lot of cultural things that keep us there, and especially generational things like, I don't know, back in New Zealand, it's quite popular to be Indigenous now. So, it's actually, from, back to those traumas and stuff like that, this is a new generation that want to be down at the creek where our forefathers and our people before us were down there fighting, where we're like, man, this is actually cool. It's a... Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's deep-rooted connections that we have, gone from generations, and there's obligations that we have as Indigenous people, and I guess sometimes I say to them, like, we just have to adopt the burden. We adopt the burden of our people before us, and yeah, so kia ora. It is hard though. Yeah, so kia ora.
I had that same question to these guys. I'm like, what keeps you going? And those first 2 days when we travelled around the catchment and looked at their sites, there were sites where we just stood and we listened to what they had to say, and my colleague and I, we were crying. We were in tears. We were ashamed. I mean, I'm not a born New Zealander. I immigrated there, but Lisa is, and so she was lost as well because she didn't know where she belonged, and so I asked them, what keeps you going? And that commitment and that connection to the environment is incredible, and we took some of that, and this is where this reciprocal learning happened. We took some of that back with us to Nelson. I also, while I have the microphone, I really, really would like you guys to help me thank these 3 amazing people that have they've travelled the world to share their story. They've been to England, they've been to Japan, they've been to Hawaii. Where have you been this year? Canada. They travel where all these eel conferences are. They talk to other Indigenous people. They are here to talk to you guys, and there was no funding for them to come here. And not that it is super important, but I think it is important because I feel this is the going over and above and beyond. So I really thank you guys. Just incredible. Ngā mihi.
And thank you, Kāri, for making it happen and for making the end of the first day so spectacular. Thank you.